Hey, what is up guys? Joe again from Grindhouse Grotto. I'm continuing my ongoing series entitled The Forgotten Volume 1 Episode 3, where I'm going to be reviewing 1983's Sweet 16. Alright guys, before I go ahead and jump right into this review, I kind of want to give a little bit of a disclaimer, and that is, I don't see this film as a slasher film in its purity. I am adding this to my Forgotten series because I think it's got some slasher elements that are kind of mixed in. But I'm going to go ahead and explain why I don't see this film as a slasher film. I see this film more or less as a murder mystery or a murder whodunit. And I know I've talked about that a lot in some of my other videos if I've reviewed, slasher films before. These other slasher films I think are more slasher films at heart, and they've got that murder mystery kind of incorporated in there. Whereas this film is more of a murder mystery. It's the opposite, and it's got, the slasher elements sprinkled into it. This film is not a body count film. It's got basically, I think, about 3 kills in there. And then the rest of it is just kind of detective work. This sheriff in the town's trying to find out who the killer is. There's this whole mystery behind this family that comes into town, in particular this one girl. Her name's Melissa, and I'll get into that when I talk about the plot. But yeah, there's only 3 kills that happen in this film. Now, these kills are kind of done in a slasher manner, and that's why a lot of people see this as a slasher. And for the most part, if you look in, horror groups or, these cult film groups that are on Facebook, a lot of people will consider this a slasher film. And the reason being is, when these films came out in the early 80s, they were basically coming out almost every other week. You couldn't go longer than a week without having another slasher film getting released. Everybody was trying to capitalize on the success of Halloween, The Burning, Friday the 13th, these big horror franchises, these directors that were trying to make it big. They were hoping that they were going to have a successful film, these low-budget films that make a lot of money, and they could just keep pumping them out every single day. Well, that didn't happen with Sweet 16. It just didn't have the appeal that these other slasher films had. Now, what I think personally with films like Sweet 16, in a lot of cases, these films weren't intended to be slasher films. They were kind of their own thing. And then what happened was they either held off on releasing these things for several years, and then when they finally decided to release them, they rebranded them as slasher films to kind of pull in a little bit of these fans that were following these, slasher icons. And that's what I think happened with Sweet 16. The producers that made this film, they kind of shelved it for a while after making it. I think they released it like right after they made it, but they held off on it for, a little bit. They didn't release it right away. And when they released it, if you look at this cover art here, if you were in a VHS store back in the 80s and you saw this on the shelf, you would probably think this was a slasher film. And when I first had heard of this film, I thought it was a slasher film as well. And for the most part, it's got some slasher elements in it. But if you watch this film, you're going to see what I'm talking about. It's pretty much just a murder mystery. You got Dana Kimmel, who you've probably seen her in Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. She's in this movie, and she's this, young girl who's 16 years old. Her father's the town sheriff, and these murders start happening that are surrounding this family, and in particular there's this young girl, Melissa, who's the new girl in town. Every time Melissa comes in contact with anybody, somebody dies. So Dana Kimmel's character is kind of trying to tag along with her dad, who's the town sheriff, and trying to be like Nancy Drew, and she's fascinated by, murder mysteries, and she wants to help her dad kind of crack this case. And that's pretty much what this film is. It's like literally almost every 30 minutes. This film is about an hour and 20 minutes long, maybe a little bit less than that. So they time it out, so it's basically every 25, 30 minutes you're getting one kill. So there's like three kills in this film, and only one of them is really kind of in a slasher style. The rest of them are, you just see the body after it's been killed, after the person's been killed, and that's pretty much it. They do use some other slasher type elements in here. The music kind of sounds like slasher music. You get at the end kind of like a backstory of who the killer is, and if you've seen slasher films similar to The Burning or Friday the 13th. There's like a creative backstory in this film, similar to those films, where, you know, explains why the killer, what the killer's motive is and why the killer does what they do. But anyways, I'll get into that. Let's go ahead and talk about the release. This was released a couple years ago by Code Red, and they are infamous for releasing these really, you know, ultra low budget, obscure horror titles. And Sweet 16 is one of those movies. It's fallen off the radar. I'm surprised this movie even got a release. It's actually been released by 88 Films, and 88 Films kind of is piggybacking a lot of these Code Red releases. So Code Red will get them first. They release maybe, you know, 1,000 copies of this film. They don't release very many of them because these films don't have a huge fan base, so they just want to make enough to sell what they're producing. So you got to get on these on their website as soon as they go up for order if you're going to want to get a copy of these. This film, I don't even think it even sold the copies they made. It's just not a very popular film. I mean, I like it, but it's not a very good film, and I'll get into that. So anyways, 88 Films has released this. They're about the same release. I know some people that own the 88 Films release, and they own this one as well, and they've told me that as far as the transfer goes, it's pretty much the same. I don't think 88 Films did anything to doctor up the transfer. What you get on the Code Red release is a anamorphic high-def widescreen transfer of the original 35mm negative. You get on-camera interview with star Bo Hopkins, Alicia Shirley, and director Jim Sotos. So you get the lead actor, who's basically the town sheriff. You get the young girl, Melissa, who's kind of like the girl that comes to town. She's a really pretty girl. She's mysterious. All the boys want her. So she's played by Alicia Shirley. That's the actor. And this was her first film. The director, Jim Sotos, I watched the documentary on here, and he said that he was just walking around town and bumped into this girl and asked her if she would want to star in a movie. And that was that. And then she was in this film. He said that he asked her a few questions. He let her read a brief part of the script, had her act out one of the scenes, and he was like, all right, you're hired. And that's pretty much it. And a lot of these obscure movies, that's kind of what they do. The director is just kind of walking around and just finds a girl who looks like she's in need of money, and then asks them if they want to be in the film. And so that kind of happened with Alicia Shirley. She's never did anything prior to this film. She had a short career after this film, so this film kind of jump-started her in the film industry. She did a couple other things. She did some like TV work, but other than that, she didn't really do anything other than this film. Bo Hopkins is probably the strongest actor in here. He's got the most experience. And Jim Sotos, the director, didn't go on to do anything of significance. So you basically got Bo Hopkins. He's the star of this movie. He's like the Donald Pleasance of this film. But anyways, getting into the plot of this movie, basically what happens is, I've kind of already talked about it. This girl, Melissa, comes into town. Her parents come into town, and this film takes place on an Indian reservation. So you get that little kind of like mystique of an Indian reservation. People just don't really know too much about Native Americans, their culture, and kind of how they live their lives. So the whole town is kind of like, they've kind of ostracized the Native Americans in their town. So like if these natives in this film, there's two of them. There's a younger guy, I can't remember what offhand what his name is, but he hangs out in the bars. He goes there from time to time and has a couple drinks. And then you have like the elder of the native tribe, and he's kind of like a father figure to the younger guy. And they both kind of go to the bar from time to time. But you see like the locals, they're kind of talking down to him, calling him, racial slurs and stuff like that. So the town's not very fond of the natives that live in town. So that's kind of right there setting up the film to be like, okay, we're going to blame these murders on the natives. So anyways, this girl, Melissa, and her parents move into town, and all these girls that go to this local school are like, all the girls are like furious because Melissa's really attractive. She looks a lot older for her age. All the young guys that are in the school are like drooling over Melissa. They all want her. She's just very ahead of her age. She doesn't look her age. She acts more mature for her age. And she's the new girl. What happens is these people start, dying. So there's early on in the movie, you get this guy who's, You know, probably looks like he's in his early 20s at the bar. Melissa's kind of hanging outside this bar trying to pick up the guys that come out. And these two, you know, young guys in their early 20s come out. One of the guys gets in the truck with Melissa, and she's like, "Oh, when you want to go somewhere and smoke some pot," they go off together, and they go to this little part of this Indian reservation where they're kind of, you know, sitting out in the back of the truck drinking a couple beers, and they're trying to do some, you know, they're trying to have sex, and she, I guess, gets scared or whatever, and he brings her home. Later on that night, he returns to the bar, but on his way to the bar, he ends up pulling off the side of the road somewhere close to this Indian reservation, and he ends up mysteriously getting killed. That sets up the whole plot of, okay, there's a killer in town, the sheriff's, you know, sheriff's hot on the trail trying to find out what's going on. Dana Kimmel's character is like, you know, tagging along with her dad, trying to help him out. And then, so everybody starts thinking it's the natives. There's this whole kind of like subplot going on with the Native Americans. And nobody really suspects that it's Melissa until later on in the film. Everybody's like, okay, what the heck is going on with this Melissa girl? Every person that comes in contact with this Melissa girl ends up dying. And that's pretty much how the film plays out. They end up having this birthday party, her Sweet 16 party at the end of the film. Dana Kimmel's character, her brother, is around the same age, and he really starts kind of having an interest in Melissa. Dana Kimmel's character doesn't want him to have anything to do with her because she's like warning him that this girl, something's wrong with her. She's not right. I don't want to see you get hurt. Stay away from her. She's trouble. But the brother is kind of becoming infatuated with Melissa. There's one scene in this movie where it's so ridiculous. It's at the school, and Melissa, she's kind of flirty. She's kind of a slut. I'm just gonna put it that way. She's putting herself out there. She's trying to pick up dudes, and it's a really silly scene. She's sitting by a tree in the shade. She's got her legs crossed, kind of just advertising herself, and she's sitting there eating an apple, but she's doing it all like in a seductive way. And they got this really cheesy music, and I'm not gonna try to sing it, but it just keeps on repeating, "Oh, Melissa," and then like over and over and over again. It's got this like piano music in the background, and it's just really cheesy. That's what you're getting with this film, guys. I didn't want, when I did this Forgotten series, I kind of left out that not every single one of these films is going to be, you know, a good film. This is probably it's the weakest film. It is definitely an oddity in the slasher genre, even though this is not really a slasher. It's an oddity for sure. This movie is really weird. It's not a good film, guys. It's not a good film. If you're a slasher completist, then you'll probably want to see this film, but there's a lot of things in this movie that just leave you question, like, what the hell were they thinking when they made this film? There's just no good redeeming factor besides a shower scene with Melissa. You get a little bit of Tina in here if you're into that kind of thing, but besides that, this film really doesn't have anything going on for it. I'm like one of those people that I have to see every possible slasher film that is available. I just want to see them out of curiosity, and this is a film that I just can't. It's really hard to make it through it. I've seen it a few times. I keep on trying to watch this film and give it more of a chance, but I just can't do it. But that's pretty much the plot of this film, guys. It's a murder mystery. You've got a few characters. There's a lot of they're very heavy-handed with the character development in this film. So most of the character development involves the sheriff and then the brother and sister. That's pretty much it. You get some character development between the sheriff and a couple of the Native American characters, and they leave Melissa and her parents kind of a mystery throughout the film. They're just there, kind of lurking in the shadows, so to speak. And I'm sure if you've seen this cover, you already know who the killer is. I like this cover, but I mean, come on now. There's a knife right below the female character, and this drawing on the cover is the exact last scene in this movie, where Melissa she's skinny dipping in this like lake, and Dana Kimmel's brother I can't remember what the character's name is, but he's the one that's infatuated with her. This scene takes place at her Sweet 16 birthday party, and she lures him down to this lake to go skinny dipping, and this is the scene right here. And this is like the final scene of the movie where it's revealed who the killer is, and everything that's happened in this film kind of culminates in this one scene. And I don't want to, reveal the end of this movie because I want to kind of at least surprise you a little bit if you haven't seen this movie before. But it's not. There's a little bit more to this killer than what you think. You're gonna know who the killer is, but there's a little twist to it at the end. I'll leave it at that. But anyways, guys, that's my thought on this movie, Sweet 16, released in 1983. If you're somebody like me that has to see absolutely every possible slasher film that's ever been created, then by all means go ahead and get this movie. I wouldn't say that it needs to be on the top of your list to go out and just go out and get immediately, but it's definitely worth a viewing. It's okay. There's actually some elements of Sleepaway Camp in here. Angela's character kind of reminds me a little bit of Melissa. In Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3, this mysteriousness of Angela's character in those movies kind of reminds me a little bit of God, I'm sorry guys, Melissa's character in this film. She's kind of mysterious like Angela. You kind of know early on that it's Melissa's character, and I'm going to go ahead and just give it away. You can't be any more obvious than those guys. I'm sorry. But, yeah, that's kind of... It's got that flavor, that feel of Sleepaway Camp. It's not a camp setting, but her character reminds me of Angela. Anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on Sweet 16. Hit me up with a like if you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy my series to this point, drop me a comment in the comment section. Have you ever seen this movie? Have you experienced some of the same feelings about this film that I have? If you have seen this film, do you see it as a slasher film, or do you see it more of as like a murder mystery, murder whodunit? Anyways, guys, please subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content and you want to see future content, and hit that bell in the corner so you can get updates when I update a new video. Alright guys, till next time, take it easy.